Question 1. Investigation of a commercial driver operating a delivery vehicle in Prince Edward Island discovers that a critical safety indicator light on the dashboard has illuminated. The driver is currently en route to a time-sensitive delivery and is concerned about delaying the delivery schedule. What is the most appropriate course of action for the driver to take? Option A. Continue driving to complete the delivery, assuming the indicator light is a minor issue that will not significantly impact the vehicle's immediate safety or performance. Option B. Ignore the illuminated safety indicator light and continue driving, hoping that it is a false alarm or will resolve itself before the end of the delivery route. Option C. Attempt to diagnose and fix the illuminated safety indicator light themselves at the side of the road to avoid significant delays. Option D. Immediately pull over to a safe location, cease operation of the vehicle, and contact their supervisor or dispatch to report the illuminated safety indicator and seek instructions on how to proceed. Correct answer is D. Immediately pull over to a safe location, cease operation of the vehicle, and contact their supervisor or dispatch to report the illuminated safety indicator and seek instructions on how to proceed. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance immediate personal needs with the overarching legal and safety obligations of operating a vehicle on Prince Edward Island roads. The temptation to prioritize convenience over adherence to regulations, especially when faced with a minor, seemingly harmless deviation, can lead to significant legal and safety repercussions. Careful judgment is required to recognize that even minor infractions can have broader implications for road safety and legal compliance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle and addressing the issue before continuing the journey. This approach prioritizes safety and legal compliance above all else. Specifically, pulling over to a safe location and contacting a supervisor or designated authority to arrange for a replacement vehicle, or to receive instructions on how to proceed without violating the terms of the driver's license or company policy, is the most responsible action. This aligns with the principles of safe driving and adherence to the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that drivers operate vehicles in a safe and lawful manner, and that any equipment malfunctions that compromise safety must be rectified. It also reflects a commitment to professional responsibility and the company's operational integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Continuing to drive with a known issue, even if it seems minor, is a direct violation of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act's provisions regarding vehicle safety and proper operation. This approach demonstrates a disregard for the potential risks to the driver, other road users, and property, and could lead to penalties if stopped by law enforcement. Attempting to fix the issue roadside without proper knowledge or tools, or without informing the appropriate personnel, is also problematic. This could exacerbate the problem, create a new safety hazard, or lead to unauthorized modifications or repairs, which are not permitted under standard operating procedures and could invalidate warranties or insurance. Ignoring the issue and hoping it resolves itself or goes unnoticed is the most negligent approach. This demonstrates a severe lack of professional responsibility and a willful disregard for safety and legal obligations. It places the driver and others at significant risk and could result in severe disciplinary action, fines, or even license suspension. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety, legality, and ethical conduct. When faced with a situation that could compromise any of these pillars, the immediate steps should be to 1. Assess the risk. Determine the potential danger posed by the situation. 2. Halt operation if necessary. If the risk is significant or the situation clearly violates regulations, cease operation immediately. 3. Consult and report. Inform supervisors or relevant authorities about the issue and seek guidance. 4. Follow established procedures. Adhere to company policies and legal requirements for resolving the situation. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are made with due diligence and a commitment to responsible operation. Question 2. Comparative studies suggest that individuals often face situations where their personal vehicle is not fully compliant with provincial regulations. In Prince Edward Island, if you have just purchased a vehicle and are driving it home for the first time, but have not yet completed the necessary steps for registration, insurance, and obtaining license plates, what is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action? Option A. Ask a friend to drive the vehicle home for you while you ride as a passenger, as you are not the one operating the controls. Option B. Drive the vehicle directly to a nearby location, such as a friend's house, to temporarily store it before completing the registration and insurance process. Option C. Drive the vehicle home, as it is a short distance, and plan to complete the registration and insurance paperwork immediately upon arrival. Option D. Arrange for alternative transportation to get the vehicle home, or to a location where it can be legally prepared for operation, and do not drive the vehicle on public roads until it is fully registered, insured, and has valid license plates. The correct answer is D. Arrange for alternative transportation to get the vehicle home or to a location where it can be legally prepared for operation, and do not drive the vehicle on public roads until it is fully registered, insured, and has valid license plates. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for transportation with the legal and safety obligations mandated by the Prince Edward Island Pay Highway Traffic Act. The core conflict lies between personal convenience and adherence to provincial regulations designed to ensure road safety for all users. Careful judgment is required to avoid potential legal repercussions and to uphold the principles of responsible driving. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle and arranging for alternative transportation until the required documentation is obtained and the vehicle is properly registered and insured. This approach directly aligns with the PEI Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that all vehicles operated on public roads must be registered, insured, and have valid license plates. Operating a vehicle without these requirements is a violation of the law and poses a significant risk to public safety. This proactive and compliant approach prioritizes legal and ethical responsibilities over personal expediency. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding to drive the vehicle to a nearby location, such as a friend's house, before addressing the registration and insurance issues, constitutes a direct violation of the PEI Highway Traffic Act. This action demonstrates a disregard for the law and the safety of others on the road, as an unregistered and uninsured vehicle is not legally permitted to be operated. Attempting to drive the vehicle home, even if it is a short distance, carries the same regulatory failures as driving to a friend's house. The PEI Highway Traffic Act does not provide exemptions for short distances when it comes to registration and insurance requirements. This approach also fails to acknowledge the potential risks associated with operating an uninspected and unregistered vehicle. Contacting a friend to drive the vehicle for you while you are in the passenger seat, without the vehicle being properly registered and insured, is also a violation. The responsibility for ensuring the vehicle's compliance with the PEI Highway Traffic Act rests with the owner and operator. This action attempts to circumvent the legal requirements by delegating the driving task, but it does not rectify the fundamental noncompliance of the vehicle itself. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and public safety. This involves 1. Identifying the specific legal requirements of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act regarding vehicle registration, insurance, and licensing. 2. Assessing the immediate risks associated with noncompliance, both legally and to public safety. 3. Prioritizing adherence to the law by arranging for compliant transportation or delaying the use of the vehicle until all requirements are met. 4. Understanding that personal convenience does not supersede legal obligations. Question 3. The investigation demonstrates that a driver applicant in Prince Edward Island, seeking to renew their license, has admitted to being involved in a minor traffic incident that they did not report to the authorities. Considering the regulatory framework of Prince Edward Island, which of the following actions best addresses this situation? Option A. Immediately deny the license renewal application due to the failure to report the traffic incident, as per the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. Option B. Impose an immediate suspension of the applicant's driving privileges for a period of 1 month for failing to report the incident, regardless of its severity. Option C. Request a detailed written explanation from the applicant regarding the unreported incident and any contributing factors, and then assess whether further action or conditions are necessary for license renewal based on the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. Option D. Approve the license renewal without further inquiry, assuming the incident was minor and did not result in any injuries or significant property damage. The correct answer is C. Request a detailed written explanation from the applicant regarding the unreported incident and any contributing factors, and then assess whether further action or conditions are necessary for license renewal based on the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a driver applicant in Prince Edward Island is seeking to renew their license, but has recently been involved in a minor traffic incident that was not reported to the authorities. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the applicant's right to renew their license with the Prince Edward Island government's responsibility to ensure public road safety and the integrity of the licensing system. The Registrar of Motor Vehicles must exercise careful judgment to determine the appropriate course of action without prejudicing the applicant unfairly, while also upholding regulatory requirements. The best approach involves a thorough and fair assessment of the situation, adhering strictly to the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations concerning license renewals and reporting of incidents. This approach requires the registrar to request a formal explanation from the applicant regarding the unreported incident, review any available information, and then make a decision based on the specific circumstances and the potential impact on road safety. This aligns with the regulatory framework's emphasis on responsible driving and the accurate reporting of events that could affect a driver's fitness to operate a vehicle. The Highway Traffic Act implicitly requires drivers to be forthcoming with information relevant to their licensing status, and the registrar has the authority to investigate and make determinations based on such information to protect public safety. An incorrect approach would be to immediately deny the license renewal based solely on the applicant's admission of an unreported incident without further investigation. This fails to provide the applicant with due process and may be an overreaction if the incident was truly minor and posed no immediate safety risk. It also bypasses the registrar's duty to gather all relevant facts before making a decision. Another incorrect approach would be to approve the renewal without any further inquiry, effectively ignoring the potential implications of the unreported incident. This undermines the integrity of the licensing system and the registrar's oversight role in ensuring road safety, as it condones a lack of transparency from the applicant. Finally, an approach that involves imposing an arbitrary penalty without a clear regulatory basis or a thorough assessment of the incident's severity would also be professionally unacceptable, as it lacks fairness and adherence to established procedures. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, due process, and adherence to the specific regulations of Prince Edward Island. This involves gathering all pertinent information, providing the applicant with an opportunity to explain their actions, and making a decision that is consistent with the Highway Traffic Act and its underlying principles of public safety and responsible licensing. Question 4. Assessment of a sudden dense fog bank appearing on a highway in Prince Edward Island. What is the most responsible course of action for a driver who is currently traveling at the posted speed limit? Option A. Continue driving at the posted speed limit, assuming the fog will dissipate quickly. Option B. Accelerate to try and drive through the fog bank before it becomes too dense. Option C. Safely pull over to the side of the road to assess the visibility and determine if it is safe to continue driving. Option D. Slow down slightly but continue driving without stopping to assess the situation. The correct answer is C. Safely pull over to the side of the road to assess the visibility and determine if it is safe to continue driving. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to assess the impact of a sudden, unexpected environmental change on their ability to operate a vehicle safely and legally in Prince Edward Island. The driver must balance their immediate need to reach their destination with their responsibility to adhere to provincial traffic laws and ensure public safety. This requires more than just reacting. It demands a proactive assessment of risk and a responsible decision regarding continued travel. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves immediately and safely pulling over to the side of the road, away from traffic, and assessing the severity of the fog. This aligns with the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that drivers operate their vehicles with due care and attention, and at a speed that is reasonable and prudent for the conditions. The Act implicitly requires drivers to adapt their driving to prevailing conditions, including reduced visibility. Stopping to assess the situation allows the driver to determine if visibility has dropped below a safe operating level, thereby preventing potential collisions and ensuring compliance with the law. This proactive measure prioritizes safety and legal adherence over the urgency of reaching a destination. Incorrect approach is analysis. Continuing to drive at the posted speed limit without adjusting for the fog is a direct violation of the duty to drive with due care and attention. It significantly increases the risk of a collision due to reduced visibility, failing to meet the legal standard of operating at a reasonable and prudent speed. Attempting to drive faster to beat the fog is also dangerous and contrary to safe driving practices. It demonstrates a disregard for the reduced visibility and the potential hazards it presents, increasing the likelihood of an accident. Slowing down slightly but continuing to drive without pulling over to assess the situation is insufficient. While a minor adjustment, it does not adequately address a sudden and severe reduction in visibility, leaving the driver at an elevated risk of collision and potentially still operating at an unsafe speed for the conditions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must prioritize safety and legal compliance. When faced with unexpected environmental changes that compromise operational capacity, the decision-making process should involve 1. Immediate recognition of the change and its potential impact. 2. Assessment of the severity of the impact on safety and legality. 3. Taking appropriate action to mitigate risks, which may include stopping or altering the course of action. And 4. Ensuring all actions are in compliance with relevant regulations. In this case, the driver's primary responsibility is to ensure their own safety and the safety of others on the road in Prince Edward Island. Question 5. The audit findings indicate that during a recent drive on a Prince Edward Island highway, a driver encountered a sudden, dense fog that significantly reduced visibility to less than 100 meters. The driver continued driving without activating their headlights, believing they were only necessary after sunset. Based on the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, what is the most appropriate action the driver should have taken? Option A. Immediately activate headlights to ensure visibility to other road users and to be seen by them. Option B. Activate headlights only if other vehicles are observed approaching or in the immediate vicinity. Option C. Wait for the fog to dissipate or for visibility to improve before activating headlights. Option D. Continue driving cautiously, relying on the vehicle's daytime running lights and the assumption that other drivers will be equally cautious. The correct answer is A. Immediately activate headlights to ensure visibility to other road users and to be seen by them. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential lapse in adherence to the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act concerning the proper use of vehicle lights. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driver to recall and apply specific regulations under pressure, and a failure to do so could result in a traffic violation and potential safety hazards. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with the law and to maintain safe driving practices. The best professional approach involves understanding the specific requirements of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act regarding the use of headlights during periods of reduced visibility. This includes recognizing that headlights are mandatory not only after sunset and before sunrise, but also during any time when visibility is seriously impaired by weather conditions such as fog, rain, snow, or smoke. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the legislative intent of the Act, which is to enhance driver visibility and the visibility of the vehicle to others, thereby reducing the risk of accidents. Adhering to these specific conditions ensures compliance with Section 31 of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, which mandates the use of headlights. An incorrect approach would be to assume that headlights are only required during the hours of darkness as defined by sunset and sunrise. This fails to account for the Act's explicit provisions for reduced visibility due to weather, potentially leading to a violation and increased risk. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on the judgment of other drivers to signal their presence, neglecting the driver's own responsibility to be visible. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of the proactive safety measures required by law. Finally, an approach that prioritizes convenience over safety by only activating headlights when it feels necessary, rather than when legally mandated, is also professionally unacceptable, as it disregards the established legal framework designed to protect all road users. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and safety. This involves a thorough understanding of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, particularly sections pertaining to vehicle lighting and visibility. When faced with conditions that might impair visibility, the professional should err on the side of caution and activate headlights, consulting the act if unsure of the specific requirements for the prevailing conditions. This proactive and informed approach ensures both legal adherence and the highest standard of road safety. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates that a driver approaching an uncontrolled intersection in Prince Edward Island notices another vehicle approaching from their left at roughly the same time. The driver must decide whether to proceed, yield, or take other action. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and safe driving practices? Option A. Stop completely in the intersection to avoid a potential collision, regardless of traffic flow. Option B. Proceed into the intersection, assuming the other vehicle will yield because you believe you arrived at the intersection first. Option C. Yield to the vehicle approaching from the left, as it is to your right and therefore has the right-of-way according to Prince Edward Island traffic law. Option D. Accelerate through the intersection to assert your right-of-way before the other vehicle can enter. The correct answer is C. Yield to the vehicle approaching from the left, as it is to your right and therefore has the right-of-way according to Prince Edward Island traffic law. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret and apply complex traffic regulations in a dynamic and potentially hazardous situation. The driver must not only understand the rules, but also assess the immediate environment, predict the actions of other road users, and make a decision that prioritizes safety and compliance with Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act. The pressure of other vehicles and the need for swift action can lead to errors in judgment. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves a thorough understanding and direct application of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act regarding intersection right-of-way. This means recognizing that when two vehicles approach an intersection at approximately the same time, the vehicle on the right has the right-of-way. The driver must yield to the vehicle on their right if it is already in the intersection or is close enough to be a hazard. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the established legal framework designed to prevent collisions and ensure orderly traffic flow, as mandated by the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. Adhering to this rule is a fundamental ethical obligation for all drivers to ensure the safety of themselves and others. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume the other vehicle will yield simply because the driver believes they arrived at the intersection first. This is a failure to comply with the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act's specific right-of-way rules for uncontrolled intersections. It relies on subjective judgment rather than objective legal principles, creating a significant risk of collision and violating the driver's duty of care. Another incorrect approach is to proceed aggressively into the intersection, attempting to beat the other vehicle. This demonstrates a disregard for the established right-of-way and a failure to exercise due caution, directly contravening the principles of safe driving and the specific provisions of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act that prioritize yielding to the vehicle on the right. This action is ethically irresponsible and legally actionable. A further incorrect approach is to stop completely in the intersection, blocking traffic. While seemingly cautious, this action can create confusion and hazards for other drivers, potentially leading to secondary collisions. It does not adhere to the proactive and decisive application of right-of-way rules as intended by the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and can impede the safe flow of traffic. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established legal statutes and safety regulations. This involves 1. Situational awareness, actively observing and assessing the immediate traffic environment, including the position and speed of other vehicles. 2. Legal interpretation, recalling and applying the specific provisions of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act relevant to the situation, particularly right-of-way rules. 3. Risk assessment, evaluating the potential consequences of different actions, focusing on minimizing risk to all road users. 4. Decisive action, making a clear and safe decision based on the legal requirements and risk assessment, executing it promptly and predictably. Question 7. Consider a scenario where, while driving on a rural road in Prince Edward Island, a driver notices a persistent, unusual warning light illuminate on their dashboard indicating a potential issue with the braking system. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action? Option A. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the roadway and activate hazard lights to assess the situation. Option B. Ignore the warning light and continue the journey, assuming it is a minor sensor issue that will resolve itself. Option C. Continue driving to the nearest service station, which is approximately 5 kilometers away, as the light is not preventing immediate control of the vehicle. Option D. Attempt to diagnose and fix the issue roadside while still on the shoulder of the active roadway. Correct answer is A. Immediately pull over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the roadway and activate hazard lights to assess the situation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to balance immediate personal needs with the legal and safety obligations of operating a vehicle. The temptation to prioritize convenience over safety and compliance is significant, especially when facing a minor inconvenience. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all actions taken are within the bounds of Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations, prioritizing public safety and legal adherence above all else. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately pulling over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the roadway and activating hazard lights. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the immediate safety concern of a malfunctioning vehicle component that could impair safe operation. Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act mandates that drivers operate vehicles in a safe condition. By pulling over, the driver is taking responsible action to prevent potential hazards to themselves and other road users, and to assess the situation without endangering others. This aligns with the fundamental ethical responsibility of a driver to ensure their vehicle is safe to operate and to mitigate risks. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves continuing to drive to the nearest service station, even if it is a short distance away. This is professionally unacceptable because it disregards the potential for the malfunctioning component to cause a sudden loss of control or create a hazard for other vehicles. It prioritizes personal convenience over the safety of others and violates the implied duty of care owed by all drivers on Prince Edward Island's roads. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the warning light and continue driving as if nothing is wrong. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. It demonstrates a blatant disregard for the vehicle's condition and the potential for catastrophic failure, directly endangering the driver and other road users. This action is contrary to the principles of responsible driving and the legal requirement to maintain a vehicle in a safe operating condition. A further incorrect approach is to attempt a temporary roadside fix without first ensuring the vehicle is safely off the roadway and that the fix will not create a new hazard. While the intention might be to resolve the issue quickly, improvising on a busy roadway can be extremely dangerous. It exposes the driver to traffic and may result in an inadequate or unsafe repair, leading to further problems. Safety and compliance with traffic laws must always be the primary considerations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and legal compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing and assessing potential hazards presented by the vehicle's condition. 2. Understanding the immediate legal obligations under Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act regarding vehicle safety. 3. Taking proactive steps to mitigate risks, which often means ceasing operation of a potentially unsafe vehicle. 4. Consulting relevant resources or seeking professional assistance when unsure about a vehicle's condition or the appropriate course of action. The guiding principle is always to err on the side of caution and public safety. Question 8. Upon reviewing the dashboard of your vehicle while driving on a provincial highway in Prince Edward Island, you notice a persistent, flashing red warning light indicating a critical engine issue. You are approximately 30 kilometers from your intended destination. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action to take? Option A. Continue driving to your destination, as you are close and the issue might resolve itself. Option B. Safely pull over to the shoulder of the road as soon as it is practical and safe to do so, turn on your hazard lights, and contact roadside assistance or a towing service. Option C. Attempt a quick temporary fix on the side of the road to see if the warning light turns off. Option D. Ignore the warning light and hope it is a false alarm, continuing your journey as planned. The correct answer is B. Safely pull over to the shoulder of the road as soon as it is practical and safe to do so, turn on your hazard lights, and contact roadside assistance or a towing service. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to balance immediate personal needs with the overarching responsibility to operate a vehicle safely and legally. The temptation to prioritize convenience or perceived urgency over established safety protocols is a common pitfall. Careful judgment is required to assess the true impact of the situation and to make a decision that upholds public safety and regulatory compliance. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately ceasing operation of the vehicle in a safe manner and contacting the appropriate authorities or services. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the mechanical issue without compromising road safety or violating Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that vehicles must be operated in a safe condition. By pulling over and seeking assistance, the driver prioritizes the safety of themselves, other road users, and prevents potential further damage to the vehicle or a more dangerous breakdown. This aligns with the ethical duty of care inherent in operating a motor vehicle. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves continuing to drive the vehicle with the intention of reaching a destination quickly. This is a regulatory failure as it knowingly operates a vehicle with a potentially serious mechanical defect, which is a violation of the Highway Traffic Act. It also poses a significant safety risk to others on the road, demonstrating a disregard for the duty of care. Another incorrect approach is to attempt a temporary roadside repair without proper knowledge or tools. While well-intentioned, this can lead to further damage, create a hazard for other drivers if the vehicle is not properly secured, and may not effectively resolve the underlying issue, leading to a breakdown in a more dangerous location. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of ensuring the vehicle is in a safe operating condition before continuing its journey. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the warning light and hope the problem resolves itself. This is a critical failure in responsible vehicle operation and a direct contravention of the driver's obligation to maintain their vehicle in a safe and roadworthy state as stipulated by Prince Edward Island regulations. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a potential for creating a dangerous situation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This involves a systematic assessment of the situation, identify the problem, understand the potential risks associated with continuing operation, consult relevant regulations, in this case, the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act regarding vehicle safety, and choose the safest and most compliant course of action. When in doubt, erring on the side of caution and seeking professional assistance is always the most responsible choice. Question 9. When evaluating a foggy intersection in Prince Edward Island and you can only see a short distance ahead, what is the most responsible action to take before proceeding through the intersection? Option A. Maintain your normal speed, assuming other drivers are also being cautious due to the fog. Option B. Stop at the intersection and wait for the fog to completely dissipate before continuing your journey. Option C. Slow down to a speed that allows for a complete stop if necessary, and only proceed when you have a clear and unobstructed view of the entire intersection. Option D. Proceed at a reduced speed, cautiously inching forward to get a better view of oncoming traffic. The correct answer is C. Slow down to a speed that allows for a complete stop if necessary, and only proceed when you have a clear and unobstructed view of the entire intersection. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to make a judgment call in a dynamic traffic situation where visibility is compromised. The driver must balance the immediate need to proceed with the paramount importance of safety and adherence to traffic laws. Misjudging the situation could lead to a collision, endangering themselves and others, and violating the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. Careful judgment is required to assess the risk versus the benefit of proceeding. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves prioritizing safety and clear visibility before proceeding. This approach involves slowing down significantly, or even stopping, to ensure that the intersection is completely clear of any potential hazards, such as pedestrians, cyclists, or other vehicles that may be obscured by the fog. This aligns with the general duty of care expected of all drivers under Prince Edward Island law, which mandates operating a vehicle in a manner that does not endanger others. Specifically, the Highway Traffic Act implicitly requires drivers to exercise caution and control commensurate with prevailing conditions, including reduced visibility. Stopping or slowing to ensure a clear path is the most prudent action to avoid potential collisions and comply with the spirit and letter of traffic safety regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding at a reduced speed without ensuring the intersection is completely clear is professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to adequately mitigate the risks associated with reduced visibility. While reducing speed is a positive step, it does not absolve the driver of the responsibility to confirm the absence of hazards. This could lead to a violation of the Highway Traffic Act's provisions regarding safe operation and the duty to avoid collisions. Another unacceptable approach is to proceed at a normal speed, assuming other drivers will be cautious. This is a direct contravention of safe driving practices and the expectation that drivers will adjust their speed and behavior to environmental conditions. It demonstrates a disregard for the increased risk posed by fog and a failure to uphold the duty of care. Finally, attempting to peek through the fog by inching forward without a clear view of the entire intersection is also professionally unsound. This action creates a dangerous situation where the driver might enter the path of an oncoming vehicle or pedestrian before they can react, leading to a high probability of an accident and a clear violation of safe driving principles. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety above all else. This involves 1. Hazard identification, recognizing the reduced visibility due to fog as a significant hazard. 2. Risk assessment, evaluating the potential for collision given the limited visibility. 3. Decision-making, choosing the safest course of action, which in this case is to ensure complete clarity before proceeding. 4. Action, executing the chosen safe action. 5. Review, continuously reassessing the situation as conditions change. This systematic approach ensures that drivers are not only complying with the law, but also acting ethically and responsibly to protect themselves and others. Question 10. The analysis reveals that a commercial delivery driver operating in Prince Edward Island needs to estimate the maximum potential fuel cost for a 500 km route. Historical fuel prices over the last year have ranged from $1.50/liter to $1.85/liter, with an average of $1.70/liter. The driver's vehicle has a rated fuel efficiency of 8.0 liters per 100 km, but in real-world Prince Edward Island conditions, it typically consumes 9.5 liters per 100 km. What is the maximum estimated fuel cost for this route using a calculation that prioritizes financial preparedness? Option A, $71.25. Option B, $83.60. Option C, $87.40. Option D, $79.80. The correct answer is C, $87.40. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario that is professionally challenging due to the inherent variability in fuel consumption and the need for precise financial planning in a regulated environment. A driver must not only understand the mechanics of driving, but also the economic implications of their operations within Prince Edward Island's transportation regulations. Careful judgment is required to accurately forecast costs and ensure compliance with financial reporting expectations, especially when dealing with fluctuating fuel prices. The best professional practice involves a conservative estimation of fuel costs, accounting for potential price increases and less efficient driving conditions. This approach aligns with the principle of prudent financial management, expected of licensed drivers operating vehicles for any purpose that might incur costs. By using a higher-end estimate for fuel consumption and a slightly elevated price per liter, the driver creates a buffer that mitigates the risk of underestimating expenses. This proactive stance ensures that the driver is financially prepared for the actual costs, preventing potential shortfalls and maintaining operational integrity, which is implicitly encouraged by the need for responsible vehicle operation under Prince Edward Island law. An incorrect approach would be to use the absolute lowest recorded fuel price and the most optimistic fuel efficiency. This fails to account for market volatility and real-world driving conditions, leading to an inaccurate and likely insufficient budget. Ethically, it could be seen as a misrepresentation of expected costs. Another incorrect approach is to average the highest and lowest fuel prices without considering the likelihood of either extreme. This method lacks a conservative bias and still leaves the driver vulnerable to price spikes. It does not demonstrate the prudent financial foresight required. A further incorrect approach is to solely rely on the manufacturer's stated fuel efficiency without adjusting for typical driving conditions in Prince Edward Island, such as varying road surfaces, weather, and traffic patterns. This ignores practical realities and can lead to significant underestimation of actual fuel usage. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying all relevant cost variables, fuel price, fuel efficiency, distance. 2. Researching historical data and current market trends for each variable. 3. Applying a conservative estimation methodology, particularly for volatile factors like fuel prices. 4. Calculating a projected cost with a built-in contingency. 5. Reviewing the projection for reasonableness and ensuring it meets any regulatory or personal financial obligations. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a driver approaching a marked crosswalk in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, observes a pedestrian standing on the sidewalk, looking towards the street but not yet stepping onto the roadway. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the driver to take? Option A. Honk the horn to alert the pedestrian and signal the vehicle's approach. Option B. Continue at the current speed, assuming the pedestrian will wait for the vehicle to pass. Option C. Accelerate slightly to pass through the crosswalk before the pedestrian decides to cross. Option D. Reduce speed and be prepared to stop if the pedestrian shows any intention of entering the crosswalk. The correct answer is D. Reduce speed and be prepared to stop if the pedestrian shows any intention of entering the crosswalk. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret a potentially ambiguous situation involving a pedestrian and a vehicle, balancing the immediate need for safe passage with the legal obligation to yield. The driver must make a rapid judgment call that could have significant safety and legal ramifications. Careful judgment is required to avoid collisions and adhere to Prince Edward Island's traffic laws regarding pedestrian right-of-way. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves the driver immediately slowing down and preparing to stop if the pedestrian shows any intention of crossing, even if they are not yet on the roadway. This aligns with the principle of defensive driving and the spirit of Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act, which emphasizes the safety of vulnerable road users. Specifically, Section 166 of the Act mandates that drivers must yield the right-of-way to pedestrians in a crosswalk. Even if the pedestrian is approaching the crosswalk, a prudent driver anticipates their potential movement and takes proactive measures to ensure their safety, demonstrating a commitment to preventing accidents and upholding the law. This approach prioritizes pedestrian safety and minimizes the risk of a collision. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to continue at the current speed and only react if the pedestrian steps directly into the path of the vehicle. This is a failure to exercise due care and anticipate potential hazards, which is contrary to the principles of safe driving and could be interpreted as a violation of the duty of care owed to pedestrians. Neglects the proactive measures required to prevent accidents. Another incorrect approach is to honk the horn aggressively to alert the pedestrian and signal impatience. While intended to communicate presence, this action can startle a pedestrian, potentially causing them to react unpredictably and increasing the risk of an accident. It also demonstrates a lack of courtesy and a failure to prioritize the pedestrian's safety and right-of-way. A third incorrect approach is to assume the pedestrian will wait and proceed without reducing speed. This demonstrates a dangerous assumption and a disregard for the pedestrian's potential right-of-way. It directly contradicts the legal requirement to yield to pedestrians, especially those near or entering a crosswalk, and creates a high risk of a collision. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and defensive driving mindset. This involves constantly scanning for potential hazards, anticipating the actions of other road users, especially vulnerable ones like pedestrians, and being prepared to take evasive action or yield the right-of-way. When in doubt, err on the side of caution. Always prioritize the safety of others and adhere strictly to traffic laws, understanding that legal compliance is a minimum standard, and ethical driving often requires going beyond the bare minimum to ensure safety. Question 12. Implementation of a sudden personal emergency requiring an immediate phone call while driving on a rural road in Prince Edward Island presents a driver with a critical decision. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action to take? Option A. Continue driving at a reduced speed while attempting to make the call, pulling over to the shoulder only when absolutely necessary. Option B. Stop the vehicle abruptly in the traffic lane to make the call immediately. Option C. Ignore the personal emergency and continue driving without making the call, assuming it can wait until arrival. Option D. Pull over to a safe location completely off the traveled portion of the roadway, activate hazard lights, and then make the call. Correct answer is D. Pull over to a safe location completely off the traveled portion of the roadway, activate hazard lights, and then make the call. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to make an immediate decision with potential safety implications for themselves and others. The driver must balance the urgency of their personal situation with the legal requirements and safety protocols mandated by Prince Edward Island's road safety regulations. Misjudging the situation or prioritizing personal convenience over safety could lead to a collision or a violation of the Highway Traffic Act. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately assessing the situation for safety and legality. This means pulling over to a safe location off the traveled portion of the roadway, activating hazard lights, and then making the necessary call. This approach is correct because it prioritizes the safety of all road users by removing the vehicle from a potentially hazardous position. It also aligns with the principles of responsible driving and adherence to traffic laws in Prince Edward Island, which implicitly require drivers to operate their vehicles in a manner that does not endanger others. The Highway Traffic Act of Prince Edward Island emphasizes safe operation and the avoidance of unnecessary obstruction or hazard. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to continue driving while attempting to make the call, perhaps by pulling over to the shoulder of the road without fully clearing the traveled lane. This is incorrect because it poses a significant risk of collision with other vehicles, especially on busy roads or in poor visibility conditions. It violates the fundamental principle of ensuring a vehicle is not an obstruction or hazard. Another incorrect approach is to stop the vehicle abruptly in a traffic lane to make the call. This is highly dangerous and a clear violation of traffic laws designed to maintain the flow of traffic and prevent accidents. It creates an immediate and severe hazard for other drivers. A further incorrect approach is to ignore the situation and continue driving without making the call, assuming it can wait. While this avoids immediate obstruction, it could lead to a missed critical communication and potentially a more serious consequence later, and it doesn't address the driver's immediate need in a safe and responsible manner. However, the primary failure in this approach is not the immediate safety hazard, but rather the potential downstream consequences of not addressing the urgent need. The most critical failures involve creating immediate safety risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should always prioritize safety and legality. When faced with a situation requiring a decision or action that might impact vehicle operation, the first step is always to ensure the vehicle is in a safe and legal position. This involves pulling over completely off the roadway if possible, or to the safest available location, and activating hazard lights. Only then should the driver attend to personal matters or make necessary communications, ensuring they do not re-enter traffic until it is safe to do so. This systematic approach minimizes risk and ensures compliance with regulations. Question 13. To address the challenge of encountering a significant amount of debris scattered across an intersection in Prince Edward Island, while a police officer is observing from the side, what is the most responsible course of action for a driver? Option A. Significantly reduce speed, activate hazard lights, and proceed through the intersection with extreme caution, prepared to stop if necessary. Option B. Stop the vehicle abruptly in the middle of the intersection to assess the debris. Option C. Maintain the posted speed limit and proceed through the intersection as normal, assuming other drivers will navigate the debris. Option D. Swerve sharply to avoid the debris, even if it means entering another lane of traffic. The correct answer is A. Significantly reduce speed, activate hazard lights, and proceed through the intersection with extreme caution, prepared to stop if necessary. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret and react to a complex, rapidly evolving road condition that directly impacts safety and adherence to traffic laws. The driver must balance immediate safety concerns with the legal requirements of operating a vehicle, necessitating a judgment call under pressure. The presence of a police officer adds a layer of authority and potential consequence to the driver's actions, making the decision-making process more critical. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves prioritizing immediate safety while making a reasonable effort to comply with traffic regulations as much as possible under the circumstances. This means slowing down significantly, activating hazard lights to alert other drivers to the unusual situation, and proceeding with extreme caution through the intersection. The driver should be prepared to stop if necessary and to explain their actions to the police officer, demonstrating that their primary concern was safety. This approach aligns with the fundamental principle of safe driving, which supersedes strict adherence to speed limits when conditions warrant a slower pace. Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act implicitly prioritizes safety in such situations, allowing for deviations from standard rules when necessary to avoid immediate danger. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding at the posted speed limit without acknowledging the hazard would be a significant regulatory failure. This demonstrates a disregard for the immediate danger posed by the debris and the potential for accidents, violating the duty of care owed to other road users and the general principles of safe driving. Ignoring the debris and continuing as if the road were clear is also a failure to exercise due care and attention, which is a core requirement for all drivers in Prince Edward Island. Failing to slow down or take any evasive action puts oneself and others at risk. Another incorrect approach would be to stop abruptly in the middle of the intersection without a clear and immediate danger necessitating such a stop. While caution is required, an unnecessary or sudden stop can create a hazard for following traffic and may be interpreted as impeding traffic flow, potentially leading to a traffic violation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a risk assessment framework. First, identify the immediate hazards and their potential impact. Second, consider the applicable traffic laws and regulations. Third, evaluate the available options for responding to the hazard, weighing the safety implications of each. Fourth, choose the option that best balances immediate safety with the intent of traffic laws, prioritizing the avoidance of harm. Finally, be prepared to articulate the decision-making process and justify actions taken, especially when interacting with law enforcement. Question 14. Examination of the data shows a request has been made for a list of all registered vehicle owners in a specific Prince Edward Island postal code for marketing purposes. What is the most appropriate course of action according to the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act? Option A. Advise the requester to contact the vehicle owners directly to obtain their consent for marketing, without providing any personal information. Option B. Access the information and provide it, as the request is for a specific postal code and therefore limited in scope. Option C. Provide the list of registered vehicle owners, assuming that since the request is for a specific geographic area, it is permissible. Option D. Decline the request, explaining that the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act does not permit the disclosure of registered owner information for marketing purposes. Correct answer is D. Decline the request, explaining that the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act does not permit the disclosure of registered owner information for marketing purposes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal privacy and ensure data accuracy. Misinterpreting or misusing driver information can lead to significant legal repercussions for the individual and the organization they represent, as well as erode public trust. Careful judgment is required to navigate the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and its implications for accessing and using driver information. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves adhering strictly to the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act regarding the access and use of driver information. This means only requesting and utilizing information for purposes explicitly permitted by the Act, such as for law enforcement or administrative purposes directly related to vehicle registration or licensing. This approach is correct because it aligns with the legal framework designed to protect individuals' privacy and prevent the misuse of sensitive personal data. The Act outlines specific conditions and authorizations required for accessing such records, and any deviation constitutes a breach of law and professional ethics. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves accessing driver information without a clear, legally defined purpose under the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act. This is a regulatory failure because it violates the privacy rights of individuals and contravenes the specific provisions of the Act that govern data access. Such actions could lead to penalties for unauthorized access and misuse of information. Another incorrect approach is to use driver information obtained for a legitimate purpose for unrelated personal or commercial gain. This is an ethical and regulatory failure. The Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act is designed to ensure that information is used solely for its intended, lawful purpose. Diverting it for other uses constitutes a breach of trust and a violation of the Act's intent, potentially leading to severe consequences. A further incorrect approach is to share driver information with individuals or entities not authorized by the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act to receive it. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. The Act imposes strict limitations on disclosure to prevent data breaches and protect individuals from identity theft or harassment. Unauthorized disclosure undermines the integrity of the system and exposes individuals to significant risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals dealing with driver information in Prince Edward Island must adopt a proactive and compliant mindset. This involves thoroughly understanding the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and its regulations concerning data access and privacy. When faced with a request or a situation requiring driver information, the professional should ask, is this request or use explicitly permitted by the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act? If the answer is not a clear yes, the information should not be accessed or used. Furthermore, maintaining a record of all information access and usage, and ensuring that any third parties involved are also compliant with the Act, are crucial steps in professional decision-making. Question 15. Research into the implications of a driver's recent diagnosis of a condition that could potentially affect their reaction time and visual acuity, as per Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act, requires a specific course of action. What is the most appropriate response for an individual aware of this situation? Option A. Assume the driver is still capable of driving safely unless they explicitly state they are unable to do so, and do not pursue further action. Option B. Advise the driver to obtain a formal medical assessment from their physician detailing the condition's impact on driving ability, and to submit this report to the Prince Edward Island Registrar of Motor Vehicles. Option C. Inform other drivers in the community about the driver's medical condition to raise awareness of potential risks. Option D. Encourage the driver to continue driving as usual, suggesting they will get used to any new limitations. The correct answer is B. Advise the driver to obtain a formal medical assessment from their physician detailing the condition's impact on driving ability, and to submit this report to the Prince Edward Island Registrar of Motor Vehicles. Explanation. Research into the impact of a driver's recent medical diagnosis on their ability to operate a vehicle in Prince Edward Island presents a professionally challenging scenario. The challenge lies in balancing the individual's right to privacy and mobility with the paramount public safety imperative. A driver's medical condition can significantly impair their cognitive or physical abilities, directly affecting their capacity to drive safely. Therefore, a careful and informed judgment is required to determine if, and when a driver's medical status necessitates reporting to the Registrar of Motor Vehicles. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act and its associated regulations concerning medical fitness to drive. This approach prioritizes obtaining clear, objective medical information from the driver's physician regarding the specific nature of the condition and its potential impact on driving. It then requires the driver to provide this information to the Registrar of Motor Vehicles, as mandated by law, allowing the registrar to make an informed decision about license status. This aligns with the ethical obligation to protect the public while respecting individual rights, as guided by provincial legislation designed to ensure road safety. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the medical information due to a desire to avoid inconvenience or potential conflict with the driver. This failure to act on potentially critical safety information directly contravenes the driver's legal obligation to report conditions that may affect their ability to drive safely, as stipulated by Prince Edward Island law. Another incorrect approach is to assume the driver is still fit to drive without verifying the medical information, which bypasses the regulatory requirement for physician assessment and reporting. This abdication of responsibility puts other road users at risk. Finally, an approach that involves sharing the driver's confidential medical information with other parties without consent or legal justification is a clear breach of privacy laws and professional ethics. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the potential safety risk. This involves recognizing the significance of medical conditions that could impair driving. Next, they must consult the relevant Prince Edward Island legislation and guidelines to understand their reporting obligations and the process for medical fitness assessments. This includes understanding the driver's responsibility to disclose and the physician's role in providing an objective medical opinion. Finally, professionals must act decisively and ethically, ensuring all actions are compliant with the law and prioritize public safety. Question 16. Following a sudden dizzy spell while driving in Prince Edward Island, which approach would be most appropriate for ensuring both personal safety and compliance with provincial driving regulations? Option A. Only stop driving if you experience another dizzy spell immediately after the first one. Option B. Drive only during daylight hours and on familiar, low-traffic roads until you are certain you are fully recovered. Option C. Consult a medical professional for an assessment of fitness to drive and follow their advice regarding resuming driving. Option D. Resume driving once the dizzy spell has passed and you feel generally recovered. The correct answer is C. Consult a medical professional for an assessment of fitness to drive and follow their advice regarding resuming driving. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to make a judgment call about their ability to operate a vehicle safely and legally after experiencing a medical event that could impair their driving. The core of the challenge lies in balancing personal autonomy with public safety, adhering to the legal requirements of Prince Edward Island regarding medical fitness to drive. Careful judgment is required to avoid putting oneself or others at risk, and to ensure compliance with provincial legislation. The best approach involves proactively seeking professional medical evaluation and adhering to the advice provided by a qualified healthcare professional regarding driving. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the potential safety implications of the medical event. Highway Traffic Act of Prince Edward Island and associated regulations implicitly and explicitly require drivers to be medically fit to operate a motor vehicle. By consulting a doctor and following their guidance, the individual is taking the necessary steps to ensure they meet these fitness requirements. This demonstrates a commitment to public safety and adherence to the spirit and letter of the law, which prioritizes safe road usage. An incorrect approach would be to resume driving without a medical clearance, especially after experiencing symptoms that could indicate a temporary or ongoing impairment. This fails to meet the implicit requirement of being medically fit to drive and directly contravenes the principle of public safety. It could lead to a situation where the driver's reaction time, judgment, or physical control of the vehicle is compromised, increasing the risk of an accident. Such an action would be a clear violation of the responsibility drivers have to themselves and others on the road. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on personal feelings of recovery without seeking objective medical confirmation. While an individual might feel better, underlying medical conditions could still pose a risk. This approach neglects the importance of professional medical assessment in determining fitness to drive, potentially leading to a dangerous situation based on subjective self-assessment rather than objective medical advice. A final incorrect approach would be to only consider resuming driving if a specific law explicitly prohibits driving after experiencing such a symptom. This is a reactive and insufficient approach to road safety. The law generally presumes a duty of care and fitness to drive, and it is the driver's responsibility to ensure they meet this standard, rather than waiting for explicit prohibitions for every conceivable medical event. Professionals in this situation should follow a decision-making process that prioritizes safety and legal compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential impact of the medical event on driving ability. 2. Immediately ceasing to drive if there is any doubt about fitness. 3. Seeking prompt and professional medical advice from a qualified healthcare provider. 4. Strictly adhering to the medical professional's recommendations regarding driving. 5. If advised not to drive, understanding the process for medical clearance to resume driving as per Prince Edward Island regulations. Question 17. Benchmark analysis indicates that when driving on a rural road in Prince Edward Island, you observe a vehicle ahead of you swerving slightly within its lane and occasionally drifting towards the center line. What is the most prudent and legally compliant course of action to ensure the safety of yourself and others? Option A. Apply your brakes sharply and come to a complete stop in your lane until the other vehicle has corrected its course. Option B. Gradually reduce your speed, increase your following distance, and observe the vehicle's behavior to anticipate its next move. Option C. Sound your horn repeatedly and flash your headlights to alert the driver to their erratic driving while continuing at your current speed. Option D. Maintain your current speed and attempt to overtake the vehicle quickly to avoid prolonged exposure to its erratic driving. Correct answer is B. Gradually reduce your speed, increase your following distance, and observe the vehicle's behavior to anticipate its next move. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to interpret and react to a dynamic road condition that presents a potential hazard. The driver must balance the need for immediate action to ensure safety with adherence to traffic laws and the principles of defensive driving. Misjudging the situation or reacting impulsively could lead to an accident or a traffic violation. Careful judgment is required to assess the severity of the hazard, the actions of other road users, and the appropriate response within the legal framework of Prince Edward Island. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a cautious and controlled approach. This means reducing speed significantly, observing the other vehicle's intentions and the surrounding traffic, and being prepared to stop if necessary. This approach prioritizes safety by allowing the driver more time to assess the situation and react appropriately, minimizing the risk of collision. It aligns with the fundamental principles of defensive driving, which emphasize anticipating potential hazards and maintaining a safe margin of error. Furthermore, Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act implicitly supports this by requiring drivers to operate their vehicles with due care and attention, and to avoid actions that could endanger others. Slowing down and observing is a direct manifestation of this duty of care. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to maintain speed and attempt to pass the vehicle quickly. This is a failure of due care and attention. It underestimates the potential for the other vehicle to make an unexpected maneuver, such as swerving or braking suddenly, which could lead to a collision. This action directly contravenes the principle of operating a vehicle safely and without endangering others, as mandated by Prince Edward Island traffic laws. Another incorrect approach is to brake abruptly and stop in the lane of travel without an immediate, unavoidable obstacle. While braking is part of a safe response, stopping unnecessarily in a travel lane can create a hazard for following vehicles, potentially leading to a rear-end collision. This demonstrates a lack of situational awareness regarding the traffic flow behind the driver and fails to consider the safety of other road users. A third incorrect approach is to honk the horn repeatedly and aggressively while continuing at speed. This is an aggressive and unhelpful reaction. It does not address the potential hazard posed by the other vehicle and can escalate a tense situation, potentially provoking an unpredictable response from the other driver. It also fails to demonstrate the required due care and attention to the road and other vehicles. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a systematic decision-making process when encountering potential hazards. This involves 1. Perceiving the hazard, the erratic vehicle. 2. Analyzing the situation, assessing the risk and potential outcomes. 3. Deciding on a course of action, choosing the safest and most legally compliant response. 4. Executing the action, implementing the chosen response. In this case, the decision-making process should lead to a reduction in speed and increased observation, rather than aggressive maneuvers or inaction. Question 18. Quality control measures reveal that a driver approaching a crosswalk on a residential street in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, observes a pedestrian standing at the edge of the sidewalk, looking towards the street but not yet stepping off. The pedestrian's body language is ambiguous regarding their intention to cross. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the driver to take to ensure the safety of all road users and comply with Prince Edward Island's traffic regulations? Option A. Maintain current speed, assuming the pedestrian will wait for the vehicle to pass. Option B. Reduce speed significantly and prepare to stop, observing the pedestrian's actions closely. Option C. Swerve sharply into the adjacent lane to avoid any potential interaction. Option D. Honk the horn to alert the pedestrian and proceed with caution. The correct answer is B. Reduce speed significantly and prepare to stop, observing the pedestrian's actions closely. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a driver to make a critical decision under pressure, impacting public safety and their own legal standing. The driver must accurately assess the situation and apply the principles of safe driving as mandated by Prince Edward Island's Highway Traffic Act. Misjudging the situation or acting impulsively can lead to accidents, injuries, or violations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the driver prioritizing the immediate safety of all road users. This means slowing down significantly, observing the pedestrian's intent and trajectory, and being prepared to stop if necessary. This approach aligns with the fundamental duty of care expected of all drivers under Prince Edward Island law, which emphasizes anticipating potential hazards and yielding to pedestrians, especially when their presence creates uncertainty or potential conflict. The Highway Traffic Act implicitly requires drivers to exercise caution and control their vehicle in a manner that prevents collisions. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves assuming the pedestrian will stop and continuing at the current speed. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due care and control, directly contravening the expectation of vigilance and hazard anticipation required by Prince Edward Island traffic laws. It places an undue burden of prediction on the pedestrian and ignores the driver's responsibility to avoid potential collisions. Another incorrect approach is to honk the horn aggressively and proceed. The horn can be used to alert others. Its aggressive use in this context can startle the pedestrian, potentially causing them to react unpredictably and increase the risk of an accident. This action prioritizes the driver's convenience over the pedestrian's safety and fails to demonstrate the required level of caution. A further incorrect approach is to swerve sharply without fully assessing the surrounding traffic. This action is inherently dangerous, as it could lead to a collision with other vehicles, cyclists, or fixed objects, creating a more severe hazard than the initial situation. It demonstrates a lack of control and a failure to consider the broader implications of the maneuver on overall road safety, which is a core principle of responsible driving in Prince Edward Island. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and adherence to regulations. This involves a systematic assessment of the situation, considering all potential risks and the actions of other road users. When faced with uncertainty, the safest course of action, which may involve reducing speed or stopping, should always be chosen. This proactive and cautious approach ensures compliance with legal obligations and upholds ethical responsibilities to protect public safety. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that a driving instructor in Prince Edward Island has been recommending students for their road test even when their performance during practice sessions indicates significant deficiencies in hazard perception and adherence to provincial traffic laws. Which of the following approaches best reflects the professional and regulatory obligations of the instructor in Prince Edward Island? Option A. Recommend the student for the road test despite their current performance, believing that the pressure of the test will motivate them to improve their driving on the spot. Option B. Refuse to recommend the student for the road test and cease all further instruction without providing specific feedback on the areas needing improvement. Option C. Honestly assess the student's performance against the official PEI driver's handbook and recommend them for the road test only when they consistently demonstrate the required skills and knowledge for safe driving on PEI roads. Option D. Recommend the student for the road test immediately to allow them to gain experience, with the understanding that the instructor will provide discreet guidance during the actual examination. The correct answer is C. Honestly assess the student's performance against the official PEI driver's handbook and recommend them for the road test only when they consistently demonstrate the required skills and knowledge for safe driving on PEI roads. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a driving instructor in Prince Edward Island, PEI, because it involves a direct conflict between a student's perceived readiness and the instructor's professional obligation to ensure public safety and adherence to PEI's licensing regulations. The instructor must balance the student's desire to pass with the paramount importance of ensuring the student possesses the necessary skills and judgment to operate a vehicle safely on PEI roads, thereby upholding the integrity of the licensing process. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves the instructor honestly assessing the student's performance against the official PEI driver's handbook and the standards expected for a road test. This approach prioritizes the safety of the student, other road users, and the general public by ensuring that only competent drivers are recommended for licensing. It aligns with the ethical responsibility of a driving instructor to act in the public interest and uphold the standards set by the Prince Edward Island government for driver licensing. This involves a thorough, objective evaluation of the student's driving skills, knowledge of traffic laws specific to PEI, and their ability to make safe decisions in various driving conditions encountered on PEI roadways. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves the instructor succumbing to the student's pressure and recommending them for the road test despite clear deficiencies. This action directly violates the instructor's duty to ensure road safety and undermines the licensing process established by PEI. It is ethically irresponsible and potentially legally problematic, as it could contribute to an unsafe driver being licensed. Another incorrect approach is for the instructor to recommend the student for the test with a vague promise to coach them through during the actual examination. This is unprofessional and deceptive. The road test is designed to assess independent driving ability, not the ability to follow an instructor's real-time guidance. This approach fails to meet the standards of competence required by PEI's licensing authority and puts the public at risk. A third incorrect approach is for the instructor to simply refuse to teach the student further without providing constructive feedback or a clear path for improvement. While the instructor is not obligated to pass every student, a professional approach involves identifying specific areas of weakness and providing guidance on how to address them. A complete refusal without explanation is unhelpful and does not contribute to the student's development as a safe driver, nor does it uphold the instructor's role in the PEI licensing ecosystem. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly understand the objectives and standards of the PEI licensing authority, as outlined in official documentation like the PEI Driver's Handbook. Second, they must conduct an objective and thorough assessment of the student's performance against these standards, identifying specific strengths and weaknesses. Third, they should communicate these findings clearly and constructively to the student, outlining what needs to be improved and providing a plan for further instruction. Finally, they must make a professional judgment about the student's readiness for the road test, prioritizing public safety and the integrity of the licensing process above all else. Question 20. The efficiency study reveals a potential for optimizing driver testing operations in Prince Edward Island. If the current annual driver testing volume is 25,000 tests, and the average cost per test is $45,000, with a projected efficiency improvement that could reduce the average cost per test by 15% while maintaining the same testing volume, what would be the total annual savings in dollars? Option A, $112,500. Option B, $168,750. Option C, $202,500. Option D, $45,000. The correct answer is B, $168,750. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a need to optimize the allocation of resources for driver testing in Prince Edward Island. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource deployment with the paramount importance of maintaining the integrity and safety standards of the driver licensing process. Misjudging the impact of changes could lead to either an overburdened system or, more critically, a compromised assessment of driver competency, potentially increasing road risks. The best approach involves a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis that quantifies the potential savings from increased testing efficiency against the costs associated with maintaining rigorous testing standards and ensuring adequate examiner availability. This includes projecting the number of tests conducted annually, the average cost per test, including examiner time, facility usage, and administrative overhead, and the potential reduction in costs per test if efficiency measures are implemented. Furthermore, it requires assessing the impact on examiner workload and the potential need for additional training or staffing to handle any surge in demand or to implement new, more efficient testing methodologies. This approach aligns with the Prince Edward Island Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that driver testing be conducted in a manner that ensures public safety and driver competence, implying that efficiency gains should not come at the expense of thoroughness or fairness. The analysis must also consider the potential for increased test throughput without compromising the quality of assessment, ensuring that all drivers meet the required standards before being licensed. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on reducing the time allocated per test without a thorough evaluation of its impact on the assessment's comprehensiveness. This could lead to examiners rushing through critical evaluation points, potentially missing signs of inadequate driving skills or knowledge thereby failing to uphold the safety standards mandated by provincial law. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket reduction in the number of testing stations or examiners to cut immediate costs, without first conducting an impact assessment on wait times and accessibility for applicants. This could create significant delays, making it difficult for individuals to obtain or renew their licenses, and could be seen as an impediment to mobility, which is a key consideration in public service provision. A further incorrect approach would be to prioritize the use of automated testing equipment without a pilot study to assess its effectiveness and reliability in Prince Edward Island's specific driving conditions, and to ensure it meets the standards set by the provincial transportation authorities. Relying solely on technology without validating its suitability could lead to inaccurate assessments and potential legal challenges. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the objectives of the efficiency study. This involves identifying key performance indicators, KPI such as test completion rates, pass/fail ratios, examiner utilization, and applicant satisfaction. Next, data should be collected on current operational costs and testing volumes. Potential efficiency measures should then be brainstormed and evaluated through a rigorous cost-benefit and impact assessment framework, considering both quantitative and qualitative factors. Regulatory compliance and ethical considerations, such as fairness and public safety, must be integrated into every stage of the evaluation. Finally, a phased implementation plan with clear monitoring and feedback mechanisms should be developed to allow for adjustments and ensure that the desired efficiency gains are achieved without compromising the integrity of the driver licensing process in Prince Edward Island.